Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. Paul, joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler at the University of Virginia for a Divisional Round preview show. It's crazy, Ziggy. Thinking about August and September, week one, preview show for the season, and here we are in the Divisional Round. We have 3 weeks left of NFL football. It's kind of nuts how quick it goes every single season. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I believe in our week one preview, we said you're going to blink and it's going to be the playoffs. And it's past the playoffs now. We're in the divisional round. The first round of games is over. The Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers have already found a way to excuse themselves out of the playoffs so the real contenders can play.
Dude, it's crazy. It's like I feel like every day now I blink my eyes and it's the middle of a month. Like I wake up, it's January 1st, January 2nd, the New Year celebration. Just like that, January 17th, here we are now. It's like, oh my God, every single month. I feel like ever since COVID, really, every month goes so fast. I was looking through some old, just like college stuff, the college photos and letters today. I went through an old drawer. You know, when you go through a drawer and you get lost in the treasure trove, a treasure trove. It was wild. I was looking at pictures from middle school and like high school, reminiscing with a friend about it. It's unbelievable how quickly time goes, and it doesn't slow down in the NFL season at all. That's for sure. So if you're enjoying this content, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate everybody who's sticking with us throughout the remainder of the season. It's going to be a great offseason. I can't wait. As much fun as the regular season is, when you get into the offseason, it's a little bit lighter workload for us, and we start goofing off a little bit more. We're going to probably have some fun competitions and stuff like that. If you want to become a member, check out our channel homepage. There you can become a member and have access to probably some special content as we're trying to figure all this out as the offseason rolls around. You can always check us out on audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, or Twitter, Instagram, and for now, TikTok. We'll see how much longer TikTok is around.
This video's out, TikTok might be about to get banned.
I'd be shocked if it's actually banned. Like, I'm very, very surprised if it's actually banned.
I think I'm pretty confident it's going to happen.
I mean,
you go in front of the Supreme Court and you say national security, you can make whatever you want happen.
The Paul Farrington Show is a national security issue for the United States.
I mean, that's why Jack's not on the show. It's he's being interviewed by the FBI right
now. Yeah, I'd just be shocked. And you know what? At least for us, not the biggest hit in the world. Our TikTok is it's doing well. We started investing more in reels and shorts, but if it goes, it goes. All right, whatever. There are. I view TikTok. It's probably a vice, right? Would you say TikTok is that a vice?
I think. I think YouTube is like bad and nobody should be on it.
Yeah,
so, probably. What are you gonna do?
Yet here we are. Okay, so today's episode, we're gonna go through the divisional games. Just kind of not dive too deeply into any of them. Not like an individual game preview. But we'll also have the top 8 quarterbacks left. We're going to rank the quarterbacks left, doing the same way we did our joint power rankings, where Ziggy and I will go one at a time, and we'll see if we agree. We haven't seen each other's lists, so we'll see how that goes. Again, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you have not done so. I just saw a reel as well, right before we join in, Ziggy. I saw a reel about a teacher. It looked like a teacher in Minnesota who was just standing in front of his class saying, "You were born into into Minnesota sports fandom. You cannot leave. That's the way it is." And it was just all the kids in the class looking at him like, oh God, like, is this really what's going to be like? These like 10-year-old kids, they got a long way to go, man. They got a long way to go as Vikings fans. So week 4, the Ravens beat the Bills 35-10. I remember watching it, Sunday Night Football here. All of us hammered the Bills when they were down. We hit the Bills money line and we're rooting for a comeback. That never happened. It got worse. It got way worse. Derrick Henry had an 87-yard touchdown the first play of the game, finished with 199 yards. Baltimore ran for 271. It was a massacre. And you sat back and watched that and said, are the Bills really a Super Bowl contender? Are they really on the same level as the Chiefs and the Ravens and the AFC? Well, I think many weeks later, we can all say yes. The Buffalo defense has not allowed over 153 rushing yards to any other team this year. Josh Allen has done historical things, became the first player ever with 3 rushing and 3 passing touchdowns in a game. Unbelievable season for him. On the flip side, the Ravens have also gotten better. Their pass defense, which was terrible, has now not allowed over 202 yards in the air in 8 of the final 9 games of the season. Lamar Jackson is in the running for another MVP, his third. He'd be the youngest ever to have 3 MVPs. I think there are 3 matchups right now, maybe 4 teams, where whenever they play, all eyes are going to be on it. And of course, it's the ones with Mahomes, Allen, Lamar. And I think, would you put Burrow in there? Would you put Burrow versus Allen as must watch?
I think so. The Bengals
close.
have been in a weird spot the past few years, but if the Bengals are any good, people will be watching.
Yeah, exactly. So when those quarterbacks play, it just feels different. And we're lucky to be watching in this time of the NFL, like in history, because Allen and Lamar, for the right to probably go play Mahomes, and I don't get mad, Texans fans, I'm just saying probably, the Chiefs are favored. It's going to be awesome from here on out. So where do you stand at this point in time? Following the 35-10 Week 4 game, this one surely will be much closer.
I think so. And you can go back a few weeks ago, over 10 weeks at this point, to that 35-10 game. You can also go back to 2020 when Lamar Jackson and the Ravens went to Buffalo in the divisional round and got absolutely murdered. We talked about how getting the 1 seed was so important. This weekend is a perfect example of why. The Texans are a good team. There's no doubt about it. The Ravens are much better. The Bills, I'm sure, would rather be playing the Texans this weekend. So this is a huge game for them. I don't think, though, there's a lot you can learn from that Week 4 game besides it's just another game for the 2 teams. Mm-hmm. It was long ago in the season. Both teams, as you talked about, their identities have changed substantially throughout the season. Both of them have gotten much more comfortable. But I think actually, well, I'm not saying the Ravens have gotten worse. I think they've gotten a little better since then. I think the Bills have taken leaps and bounds since that Week 4 game.
Absolutely.
The offense has gotten much more consistent. The defense has gotten more consistent. Everything has gotten better for this team. I'm really excited to watch this one.
I loved, they were asking Lamar Jackson just about his friendship with Josh Allen. Have you seen this yet? Lamar's answer.
Yeah,
he said,
it's hilarious.
Yeah, he's like, when we're older, we'll probably laugh about it, but right now it's serious. I'm laughing. He said, I ain't laughing with you, talking about like hanging out with Josh Allen. And they said, like, do you hang out with him in the offseason? And Lamar goes, I don't really chill with people in the offseason, especially not other QBs. Don't get me wrong, there's no problem, but we're competing against each other. Like, I'm trying to beat you. I'm not trying to be your friend. I was like, wow, that's pretty on point. Like, he didn't hold anything back there. And they talked to Josh Allen, and he didn't care. He was like, yeah, we're competitors. Like,
these guys are here to play.
Yeah, they're here to play. And it's funny because in an age where everybody is so friendly, it's all kumbaya, out in the field. And I don't mind that. That's fine with me. I remember they said to like LeBron James, or it was LeBron or KD, they were asking about. In the NBA, you see this a lot. Is friendship, too much right now? And they were like, no, think about when you're a kid. You want to beat the crap out of your best friend whenever you play them in anything. Like, you're still friends. You don't have to hate each other. But this feels a little bit more like, Lamar is a little more old school. Like, yeah, I'm not hanging out. We're not going and playing golf with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Like, we're here to play right now. And I'm really excited for it. When you talk about the battle for MVP as well, I would love if they just made this, winner gets the MVP. I kind of like that as well. Like, I'm joking. Obviously, you can't do that, but
no. But this is how the media decides on MVP awards, right? You saw it last year's, like Brock Purdy versus Lamar Jackson, and then one game in San Francisco, and now we've decided who gets the MVP.
Well, last year was one of the weirder years for that. Where, do you remember? It was like Tua won a big game. Tua's the front runner. Purdy won a big game. Purdy's the front runner. Lamar beat Purdy. Lamar's the front runner. It was almost like, all right, guys, come on. We can't. Like, the MVP cannot be a who's winning week 15, 16, 17, like who plays the best in that week. And this year's going to be kind of nuts. So Lamar was awarded first team All-Pro. Josh Allen, second team All-Pro. But when you really take a step back and look at it, Josh Allen's actually the betting favorite, like a pretty heavy betting favorite, minus 350 on most sites. So I'm not really sure where the difference is, because it's the same people voting on all pro teams and MVP. So I guess you could try and juggle, like, is it best season, most valuable to their team? Who knows what they're going to do? If Josh Allen wins, it's kind of bizarre to me, given Lamar's first team All-Pro. But just
think when you're voting on the award, these guys have been so close all season. I think either one that gets it probably deserves it. Unlike last year, where it didn't feel like anybody really deserved MVP. This year, there's 2 guys that have lifted their team and played a huge role.
You almost wonder why did they have the co-MVP with Peyton Manning and Steve McNair? I think back in 2003,
like, because they tied.
Okay, I guess so. Like maybe
Well, no, I mean, like, what? Are you going to flip a coin? If they tie on the votes, they tie on the votes.
I think if you tie on the votes, maybe you would then have well, I wonder if other people voted. I didn't look at who exactly voted for who in 03, but what I would do is if there were guys who voted on different players, I would have those guys say, okay, like who
no, it was 16 and 16 among the voters. Like
wow.
It was
okay. All right. Yeah. Then I guess there's nothing you can do about that. Co-MVPs. That'd be kind of wild to have that. But to just
going back to this game.
Go ahead. Oh, wait, real quick. Just one more thing about this, because to really kind of show like how unbelievable these two seasons are. I was reading an article. There's 3 times ever in NFL history where a player had 40 plus touchdowns, 500 plus rushing yards, and fewer than 7 interceptions this year. It was Lamar in 2019 when he was unanimous MVP. You know, people talk about that's one of the best seasons quarterback has had. 2024 Lamar, 2024 Josh Allen. Like it's a crazy year for both of these guys. In
many years, Joe Burrow throws for 5,000 yards, 40 plus touchdowns, and he's not even in the conversation.
Not even close. Yeah,
I get it's because they didn't make the playoffs, but in an ordinary year, they'd be all over it.
Dude, Saquon ran for 2,000 yards.
Like, who cares?
Adrian Peterson did that MVP. Like it's crazy what's going on this year. All right, you said back to the game. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do want to say here's the key for the Bills. They gave up 275 rushing yards to the Ravens last time they played.
Yep.
And the thing I'm excited to see, they had a bunch of injuries for that game.
No one talks about that.
3 key players like Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Teron Johnson, like all those guys were out, and they all play an important role in the run defense. You are going to see a substantially different Bills defense this time around. But if you give up 200 plus running yards to the Ravens, it's going to be like 10 degrees freezing. You don't have a chance.
I mean, this is why you brought Derrick Henry there. This is the exact reason you want Derrick Henry, because last year we saw the Ravens run game basically flame out in the playoffs. They were useless against in their loss to the Chiefs. And you bring in Derrick Henry, 10-degree game. Like, this is why you have him here. And just look at his first postseason performance with the Ravens. Look at what he did to Pittsburgh last week. And that's a good Steelers defense, too. That's not a Steelers defense that gets ran on like that all the time. So you're seeing already the benefits of the Derrick Henry. You've seen it all year, but you're seeing exactly the reason they brought him in. All right, we need a Robin to the Batman for when we're playing Josh Allen and Mahomes and potentially Burrow in the playoffs. So they got that there. It's the injuries, like you said, are something that people haven't talked about. And I think you're right that the Bills have gotten better throughout the year at a faster rate than Baltimore has. But I you know what I'm thinking about this as? Like Danny Heitfitz, I think it is, from The Ringer. I was reading one of his articles. And it was a really good comparison, I thought. He was talking about how Lamar and Allen here, you know, this is a huge game. And this is the right to go to the AFC Championship game. And you're going to, in all likelihood, go against Mahomes. But this feels like the season where they have to make it happen against Patrick, who's, I think, in 7 years has not gone any further or any less far than the AFC Championship game. So is this going to be like Nadal, Federer, Djokovic? This is the comparison. Those 3 guys where they're all kind of taking turns winning. Or are we just firmly in a 1990s NBA? With Michael Jordan dominating when you still have great players. You know, Charles Barkley won an MVP. Karl Malone won MVPs. But there was one guy who was clearly superior to everyone else. And this feels like a game for both teams might have the best chance they've ever had at getting the Chiefs. And that to me is why I'm like, all right, this could wind up being the game of the season right here. So I think I lean Buffalo because they're at home, but it feels almost disrespectful to Baltimore given the way they beat down on the Bills in week 4. I know you shouldn't look back that far in a game, but Josh Allen, you know, he's just been so good this year. And he's carried so much weight for this offense. At the same time, though, James Cook adds another element. He's not talked about nearly as much as Derrick Henry, but James Cook is a great running back.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry averages 6 yards a carry, so everyone talks to him. James Cook is averaging 5. That's pretty good.
No, James Cook is really good, but people don't talk about that. You know, I think Josh Allen, I think it looks like Josh Allen does a lot more for the Bills, and he does a lot. But they also have they have good offense. You know what I mean? James Cook is a good player. Dalton Kincaid's a good player. Amari Cooper's a good receiver. He's carrying a lot of weight, but do you really think he does that much more than Lamar?
I think the answer to that is no, just because you've picked quarterbacks 1 and 2 for does the most for their offense in the entire NFL.
Fair enough.
Like
Fair enough.
Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, we've talked about in the show, are the two guys where it feels like, you need to like build around them a little bit, but once they're in their system, like they will just produce more value than any other player in the NFL. And I'm glad he talked about this being the year that both of those guys need to step up. And the reason that I'm hesitant to give too much of an advantage to the Ravens is because time and time again, even though Josh Allen and the Bills haven't gotten it done, he has stepped up and played great when the Bills need him most. In these playoff situations, you look at the 13 seconds games, you look at a few of the other games against the Chiefs. Like Josh Allen has played very well in the playoffs, even though it hasn't been quite enough to get it done. Lamar Jackson historically has not. He's played all right. He hasn't played terrible football, but you've seen of this Ravens team. It looks like they're unbeatable in the regular season. It goes to the playoffs and the offense just isn't quite clicking, right? They're not running the ball at all. They're asking Lamar to do everything. So it's going to be a huge year, I think, for Lamar Jackson's legacy and proving that he belongs with the top guys in the NFL to step up and have a big performance. And as you say, the most open year we've seen in a while in the AFC. Like you think about how many dynasties the Patriots ruined. There were a couple of years there where the Patriots weren't good enough and you could take advantage of them. I'm thinking like 2010 when they lost in divisional round, like 2019 when they lost in the wild card round. Like there were times when Tom Brady and his Patriots teams weren't great. You had to take advantage of that because if you couldn't, next year they're just going to win the freaking Super Bowl.
Yeah, and we're still in the midst of this. Like, how old's Patrick Mahomes? Was he 20, 29, 28?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like Patrick Mahomes is 37 years old like Brady was in 2019 in his late 30s. Like, we are in the midst of this. And the Chiefs have shown vulnerabilities. But that's the thing about the Chiefs, though, man. They're able to turn it on when it matters. And I know that you can argue about in the 13-second game. Like, Josh Allen, his whole playoff career, Josh Allen's basically been amazing. They flopped against the Bengals at home a couple of years ago. But Josh Allen's been a very, very good playoff performer. It wasn't the stat. Doesn't he have like the most touchdowns ever in like wild card round history or something? Like it's something crazy. But the thing is, whenever they play the Chiefs just make that one extra play. And it might be just because you left them 13 seconds. Like that just is sometimes how it goes when you play the Chiefs. But I agree with you. I think this is a huge legacy game for both of them because we've said this so many times. You never know like how many chances you're really going to get. And look at the Bengals right now. Like they should be a playoff team every year with Joe Burrow, but you just don't know. And when you have teams like the Bills and the Ravens and the Chiefs, someone might just have an unbelievable year and you're not going to be able to beat them. So I think this one, since it's so wide open, I can't wait to watch. I'm leaning Buffalo, but I'm leaning Buffalo. What about you?
I'm leaning Buffalo because I think these two teams are neck and neck and Buffalo gets to play at home.
Yes. If it was in Baltimore, I'd go,
I'd
yes.
be taking the Ravens.
And you know what? The Ravens, so they had the tiebreaker over Buffalo, but wound up being one game short. So you look back on the season, and for the Ravens, you had that loss to the Raiders. Like you had a couple losses for Baltimore. Think about the toe being out for Isaiah Likely against the Chiefs from this game being in Baltimore. And who knows? Maybe that winds up being the difference in this one. So, all right, let's get into the top 10 not top 10. There's only 8. The top 8 quarterbacks left in the playoffs, okay? And we're going to do it the same way we do the joint power rankings, where you'll start, then it goes to me, and we're going to go 8 down to 1. And we'll see how this goes. So we each have our lists. We haven't seen the other ones. So who you have at number 8?
At number 8, this is going to be controversial, and I know it. But you look at last week's game that this player played, and you look at 50 passing yards in the first half against a team that's reeling. Really? Every quarterback remaining in the playoffs is very, very good. But this player has struggled all year. The passing game has been up and down. He's been getting in fights with his receivers in public. I've got to put Jalen Hurts here.
I had him at 8 as well. I think that's the right call.
It feels crazy to say, and that's only because I think like 8 of the top 10 quarterbacks of the NFL are in the playoffs still. Like there's nobody sort of skating along here. But it's just when you look at the guys above him, I think it's very hard to trust Jalen Hurts to show up because of how many times they haven't.
Yeah, no. He's had a down year for him. You go back 2 years ago, he was an MVP candidate. And this year, yeah, there's been some injury issues, but he just hasn't been as good. And Saquon Barkley, I think Saquon Barkley, like if you were to say, is that Saquon Barkley or Jalen Hurts' team? I think more people would say Saquon right now. I think, now look, if you take Jalen Hurts off the Eagles and replace him with a backup, like Kenny Pickett, I don't think Kenny Pickett gets the Eagles. Like they're not a Super Bowl team with Kenny Pickett. Maybe they're a wild card. Probably not. So Jalen Hurts, you can't understate his value, or you can't overstate his value is very immense to this team. But Saquon Barkley has been a huge addition, and I think that he's detracting from the support that Jalen Hurts should probably have. 7, I'm gonna go CJ Stroud here, and that's tough because we're a big CJ Stroud Texans podcast. Like we've been on these guys from the beginning, but right now the way he's playing, I can't put him over any of the other 6. Whether it's because of, and I'm viewing this as we have one game to win. Okay, who would I want? Whether it's experience or straight up talent. So I'm gonna go Stroud at 7.
I didn't have Stroud at 7. I had him at 6. CJ Stroud has been up and down this year. There's no doubt about it. But I think if you look at the evidence over the last 2 seasons, I like him more than the player I'm probably going to be putting at 6. But CJ Stroud's definitely in this bottom third here.
All right, who you got at 6?
At number 6, I had this player 7. I'm putting in Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels obviously has been electric. Obviously, he's played well. But he's still a rookie quarterback. He's had some good games. He's had some mediocre games. Besides the Eagles game back in November, he really hasn't had a whole lot of bad games. But Jayden Daniels, for me, just because he's a rookie, it's his first year. I know he played great against the Buccaneers, no doubt about it. That game-winning drive gave me a lot of confidence. But I just don't think you can put him above anybody who's ahead of there. We've got 2 Super Bowl winners and 3 other really great quarterbacks. But also, he's not the worst, which as a rookie quarterback in the divisional round is pretty impressive.
It's unbelievable what Jayden Daniels is doing right now with the Commanders. Like he looks like the next future star. If you're talking about a guy who can creep into that top 5 of quarterbacks, we've talked about the top 4 is clearly Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, and Burrow in some whatever order you want. And then 5 sort of open. Some people say Herbert, some people say Stroud. I've seen people put Stafford before. I've seen, there's a bunch of different quarterbacks. Jayden Daniels has a shot to get into that top 5, which is pretty unbelievable. And it's, here he is in the divisional round. So I actually had Daniels at 6 as well. I was flip-flopping him. I almost put him at 5. Because for one game, the ceiling Jayden Daniels provides is pretty damn high. I'm going to put Jared Goff at 5. And people might be upset with me having him behind Matthew Stafford. But again, we're talking about just one game. Who am I trusting here? I'm taking the Super Bowl champion. I'm taking Stafford over him. I think Stafford's a better arm talent. He hasn't been as consistent this year. But I also think part of that is, like Jared Goff is perfect for what the Lions want to do. He's great in that system. Individually, probably still very good. No shade on Jared Goff. Playing like a top 10 quarterback in the league. I just have him here at 5.
Yeah, I mean, the Super Bowl run from Matthew Stafford was incredible. But you talk about how time goes by. That was 3 seasons ago, right? Like that was 2021. This is 3 full seasons later.
You disagree?
Jared Goff since that. What?
You disagree or no?
I disagree. Yeah, I've got Goff ahead of Stafford. I think if you look at the past 3 years, every single season, Jared Goff has played better than Matthew Stafford. I know winning a Super Bowl is a big deal and that he deserves some credit for that. He deserves a lot of credit for that. That was an incredible run. But Stafford has been prone to some, even in big moments, just some very strange games. He can make big mistakes. You take the receivers away. Everybody says about Jared Goff, you take the receivers away, he gets a lot worse. We saw it with Matthew Stafford. That happened too. Everybody seems to forget that going into the playoffs before he crushed the Minnesota Vikings, he was coming off 3 putrid games. I've got him at number 5.
Okay, so you got Stafford at 5, but I had the pick, so I put
fair
Goff.
Enough.
So I put Goff at 5. You're going to go Stafford at 4, I'm assuming.
I'm going Goff at 4, yeah. Stafford at 4. I would have
okay.
put Goff at 4. Stafford's going in at 4 here. Well, 1, 2, and 3. There's only 3 guys you can put there. It's no shame to be ranked below Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. Those are the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL.
So
Sorry, Matthew Stafford, you're a great player. You can keep up with them on a good day, but come on.
So this is funny. After I put Goff at 5, I wrote in Stafford at 4 and my pick for 3. But I'm not sure who you're going to do 2-1. Like I know what I would do, and I think everyone listening knows how I would order this if you've been listening all season. But I'm going to go Lamar Jackson at 3. And it's close. This is the closest I've been amongst these 3 quarterbacks all year. But I'm not going to argue with anyone who puts Lamar at 1, Allen at 1. They're all unbelievable quarterbacks. I just think that I trust Patrick Mahomes more in the bigger moment than any quarterback in the league. Maybe any quarterback other than like Tom Brady ever that I've watched. And maybe even including Brady. And then Allen, I just slightly favor Josh over Lamar. And it's total preference because Lamar's the best running quarterback we've ever seen. I just think Josh Allen, when he's on fire with his arm, he's just unbelievable. He's a one-man wrecking crew. As is Lamar Jackson. I just favor Allen a little bit more. So who do you have at 2-1?
At number 2, you're correct. I think all the viewers can predict exactly where we'd go here. This is the power rankings, not the record rankings. So coming in at number 2 is Patrick Mahomes.
I knew you'd do that. I knew you'd do that.
I know Patrick Mahomes has the playoff magic. I will tell you what, in 3 weeks when we're sitting here previewing the Super Bowl, I'm going to look like an idiot for doubting Patrick Mahomes. And
you
doubting Patrick Mahomes here is saying he's only the second best quarterback in the NFL at the moment. But look, what Josh Allen has done this season, I think the way he's elevated everyone around him, how hot he's playing, it's hard not to put him at number 1. I'd actually have Patrick Mahomes at number 3 on my list. Again, any of these guys on any given day can obliterate anybody in the NFL. There's no question about it. But the Chiefs offense just hasn't looked itself this year. And even last year, right, when you were thinking that, towards the end of the season, things started to click. They really started picking up. We haven't seen that to the same extent this year. They've got a big challenge against the Texans defense. Patrick Mahomes can prove me wrong and slaughter them. But I'm putting him at number 2.
I've been on this the entire year. I'm not putting Mahomes at lower than 1 until they lose. Like, I know people might get upset about that. I had the Chiefs at number 1 in the power rankings until they lost as well. Until I see him go down to one of these guys, I'm not moving him. He beats them every time when it counts. And that's been the story of their whole careers. Like, that is the story of the Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson's careers right now. Amazing MVP level quarterbacks who could not beat Patrick Mahomes. Like, if you fast forward, let's say football stops today, right? Never play another game. In 10 years, we're talking about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. The story is, they were unbelievable, but could never beat Patrick Mahomes. You need to have the name Patrick Mahomes after those two when talking about their legacies at this point in time. And that's why this year is so important. Like that's why if they're going to have these historic seasons and they're playing each other, it's too bad that someone has to get eliminated because they've been that fun to watch. But you have to beat Mahomes or else that's going to be your legacy forever. And this is the year to do it. So I can't put Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson ahead of him as this list is who do you want to win one game? And they've never done it yet. So I'm waiting to see it. But I get it. Again, I'm not going to get mad at you because they're all unbelievable.
Yeah, all these guys it's so close. If you look at like the advanced numbers, they're just passing each other every week. You wonder something crazy?
Please.
If Sam Darnold had beaten the Rams last week, 4 of the 8 quarterbacks left in the playoffs would be from that 2018 draft class. Yeah. Actually, no, only 3 because the Bucs got eliminated. But we were super close. I think Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson going on here. Maybe not that close to having Sam Darnold go on if you watch that game. But that 2018 draft class for quarterbacks was just incredible. You hear every year, like, this quarterback class is incredible. There's going to be so many Hall of Famers to come out of it or whatever. 2018 was actually that year. It's Saquon. He's basically the quarterback of his team.
It's funny, man, because like in a year where there's been great stories, like you had the Chargers resurgence with Jim Harbaugh. I think you saw a lot of coaches have really good efforts. The Vikings with O'Connell and Sam Darnold surging during the season. Like, for all the different storylines you had, at the end of the day, the division winners were basically who had the best quarterback. And that's sort of how it is every single year. But look at like the West, Stafford. Yep. You take him over everyone out there. You take Mahomes over everyone in the West divisions. Goff, yeah. This year, he's been better than Jordan Love and better than Sam Darnold. Lamar, MVP candidate. Allen, MVP candidate. Maybe the only one, maybe if you would take Jayden Daniels over Hurts, but still, most people I think would take Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, but even then, both those teams are still in the playoffs.
Yeah,
so
both
whatever.
those teams, and they're both still alive in the playoffs. Yeah, Baker best in the South, and Stroud best in the South. And it's like you could do all this team building you want, and it's important because these are all good football teams. You know, all the division winners are good football teams. But at the end of the day, you have the quarterback. You're the best quarterback in your division. You're probably going to win that division. That's just how it goes. That's football. It's the most important position in sports. Okay, let's talk a little. How about some Commanders Lions, Ziggy? As we pump out this Lions content, Lions fans are finally getting on us. Like, all right, where have you been all season? We
put out a Lions breakout almost every week.
We had a lot of Lions breakouts, but you know what? When we have the amount of Packer content coming out, I understand why Lions fans are like, hey, you've ignored us all year. You're hopping on now. Like, yeah, hell yeah, hopping on now. You got no one else left. Like the Lions look awesome. So Lions Commanders, the Commanders, there's one glaring weakness in this game to me to be exploited. It's the Commanders' rushing defense, which has allowed 137.5 rushing yards per game this year. It was 30th in the NFL. That's what everybody's going to be talking about. Any analyst is going to be talking about that. We're not analysts. We don't give like we could talk a little bit about stats and stuff, but this is more of a storyline show. Well, Ziggy's more of an analyst guy, but this is more of a story, at least for me and Jack, storylines. But if we're going to dive into the numbers, that's the one to pay attention to. The Commanders' defense wasn't that bad, though, against Tampa last week with Bucky Irving. Only 101.
Bucky Irving's no slouch.
Bucky Irving's good. 101 yards allowed last week. However, I think Jahmyr Gibbs, the return of David Montgomery, and this Lions offensive line present another issue. So when I look at this game, Ziggy, my initial thought is glaring weakness for the Commanders versus a glaring strength of the Lions. And on top of that, you just have a Detroit team that's pretty much better across the board. So do you see, where do you see the room for Washington to pull off this upset? Because everything screams Detroit should win this game handily.
Here is what it is. We've seen the formula for beating this Lions team when the run game is clicking. It is not stopping the run game. Look, when the Lions offense is on, you can say the Commanders have a weakness on their run defense, and that's true. You can have the best run defense in the NFL. When the Lions are on offense, they are going to score. And there's nothing you can do about it. The thing that makes the Commanders different, and I think gives them any chance in this game, is that they don't need the defense to win them the game. It can be the Jayden Daniels show. Now, you talk about teams that are willing to be aggressive, that are willing to play hard to win when they have to. The Commanders were about as aggressive on fourth down as the Lions this year. The Lions went for it 22 times. The Commanders went for it 20 times. They converted about the same number of times. Dan Quinn has trained this team to be aggressive, and that is a huge asset in this game. You've got a rookie quarterback that's completed a larger percent of his passes than any other rookie quarterback. He just came off a great game-winning drive. He can run. He can pass the ball. You've got guys who are hungry like Terry McLaurin. Look, the Commanders deserve to be dogs. They deserve to be sizable dogs. There's a reason they're 8.5, 9.5 point dogs.
Yeah, I think it's going up to 9.5 now.
Yeah, the Lions are an incredible team, but the Commanders can at least play the way they have to win, which is be incredibly aggressive on offense and just hope you can get a stop or two on defense.
It is unbelievable how when the Lions get going, they feel impossible to stop. But when I look at the path, I'm with you. It's Jayden Daniels just having an unbelievable game. Remember, we talked about this the other day. Remember the Bengals game, Monday Night Football, the first time we did Jayden Daniels content on this show? You're sitting back watching that and you go, holy crap, that's a rookie. Wow. He just has the wow factor. There are only a handful of quarterbacks in the league that the ceiling of Jayden Daniels doesn't match right now. And if he just gets hot, they have enough weapons to keep up with Detroit. And it's going to take a Herculean effort, especially, but part of it is that he's so young and so new to all this that it could be a little bit of that Bengals in 2021 factor of, hey, screw it. Let's go out here. Let's just win this damn game. I don't know any better. I haven't been here before. I'm just playing football. And Jayden Daniels just playing football is probably the best way the Commanders can hang in this game. and Terry McLaurin's having the best season, one of the best seasons of his entire career. I'm really excited to watch this one. It should be a comfortable Lions win, but there's just been this stubbornness about the Commanders all year. Like they were fading towards the middle, like I'd say 70% way of the way into the season. They were starting to fade a bit. And all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts got injured in that game against them. They beat the Eagles, and next thing you know, you look up, they're 12-5, and you're like, that's a pretty damn good record. Like Dan Quinn's done a great job. Jayden Daniels is having arguably, is this a better rookie season than Stroud, you think?
I think definitely.
And we were talking about Stroud last year as having the greatest rookie season ever, possibly for a quarterback. So when you combine all these factors, it's like, all right, it's unlikely, but you have a guy that can do things other quarterbacks cannot. And when we just did our quarterback ranking, I was really close to putting him above Jared Goff for one game. I think I trust Jared Goff more to play at a high level, but the ceiling of Jayden Daniels is higher than the ceiling of Jared Goff as an individual quarterback. The Lions fans are going to get mad that I said that.
Look, you said we run a storyline show. It's our job to talk about the storylines. Let's get real about this game. The left side of the Commanders' offensive line is putrid. They've given up the 7th most sacks in the NFL. Jayden Daniels is a great player. There's no doubt about it. Terry McLaurin's a great player. But the Lions' offense is just dramatically better. Right? You look at this Commanders' backfield. They've got the great value version of the Lions, like Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. I'm sorry, I'm taking David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You could have half how good they are at football. I'm still taking the Commanders, or I'm still taking the Lions offense there.
That's awesome.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Terry McLaurin's great. He's not as good as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff, we've talked about it. He's an incredibly effective quarterback. And the Lions defense keeps getting guys back. Terry and Arnold, it looks like he's going to be able to play this game. That's a huge addition. Their defense was able to get it done against the Vikings, who had a hot offense with a hot quarterback. I think this is going to be a slaughter. It's good that we're talking about this game. I like the Commanders. They've had a great year. I think this is going to look a whole lot like CJ Stroud last year. You have a great game against a mediocre team. Nice job. You can feel good about yourself. Then you go and play the big boys and get demolished and think, how are we going to get it done next year?
I think this is going to be like the Bucs game last year, the playoff game against the Bucs, where Detroit was in a comfortable spot most of the game. Late, the Buccaneers had a chance. I think they had the ball down 8 with a chance to tie it. And it never really felt, did they get the ball back? I can't remember. But it was a game. You're always watching. You didn't turn it off, but you never really felt like the Buccaneers were going to win. And that's kind of how I see this going. I don't think the Lions are going to go in there and just blast the Commanders. It's possible. I mean, they've been doing that to teams all year. But I don't think Lions fans are going to, in Ford Field, are going to be on the edge of their seat. Tom Monroe will not be sweating this one out in the final minute.
Well, do you know what the last team the Commanders beat in the playoffs was back in 1991?
In 1991?
Yeah.
Was that the Super Bowl?
That's when they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
they beat the Buffalo Bills. To get to the Super Bowl, they beat the Detroit Lions. That was the last team in the NFC they beaten in the playoffs before this year was the Detroit Lions. So expect to see a little Commanders-Lions 1990s rivalry revived.
I bet you they show that game. 100% they're going to show that game.
It's guaranteed.
At some point. But you're totally right. The Lions are just better than Washington. It would take the Herculean effort from Jayden Daniels. And let me tell you, if Jayden Daniels goes into Detroit and beats the Lions, the media storm around him is going to be unbelievable over the next week and a half. I'm really excited for the game. Again, should be a comfortable Lions win, but there's a chance. There's always a chance. Okay. I want to go in a time machine here, Ziggy. Okay. Let's go back to Sunday, October 30th, 2022. All right. The Detroit Lions have just lost 31-27 to the Dolphins. They're 1-6 on the season. Jared Goff in 2021 had gone 3-10-1 when he was the starter for the Lions. That would make him 4-16-1 as a starter in Detroit so far. Matthew Stafford, a year ago, won the Super Bowl with the Rams. The year after leaving the Lions, their franchise quarterback, their golden boy, immediately wins when he leaves. Your team has not won a playoff game since 1991, 30 years ago. You've never won the NFC North. Dan Campbell, no signs of him being a good coach other than saying, trust the process. You just got to trust me. Well, it's good that they trusted him. Because since then, 8-2 to finish 2022, 12-5 in 2023 with the 2 playoff wins, losing in the NFC Conference Championship game, and 15-2 this year. They are 37-10 since that day. And I can't help but wonder, is this the greatest turnaround? If they go and win the Super Bowl, will this be the greatest turnaround that we've ever seen an NFL team have? Especially given who the Lions are. You know, not just the records and not just the player storylines, but who the Lions were as a franchise. Is this possible? Like, what do you think of this?
There's only one other team I can think of that's had a turnaround even somewhat similar to this. And that's, I'm thinking, the 1999 Rams. Like, you look at that Rams team. They just moved to St. Louis a few years ago. Here's what they'd finished in their division the 9 years before then. 3rd, 4th, 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 4th. Then they expanded to 5. So they went 3rd, 3rd, 5th, 5th, win the Super Bowl, lose a wild card game, losing the Super Bowl. It's like that Rams.
That's pretty quick,
Once Kurt Warner showed up, you know, greatest show on turf. They were incredible. Excellent year from them. But that Rams team, they hadn't won. They'd won a championship back in sometime in the early 1950s. You know, that was what fans could talk about. You sometimes hear Lions fans say, "Yeah, we've never won a Super Bowl. We won some championships."
Well,
you probably weren't alive for that.
That's what Vikings fans say.
Yeah, no, it doesn't mean anything. The Super Bowl era is its own thing. And after that, they had a successful run for a long time. They hadn't won double-digit games since 1989. They won double digits for their next 5. So it was a great turnaround from them. There's no doubt about it. But this Lions team, I think, it would be the greatest of all time. It would beat even that. Because like you said, I mean, it's the history of this Detroit team. That Rams team had been to the playoffs a few times in the years before, right? They'd lost a conference championship game in 85 and 89. It had been a tough stretch of 10 years.
I mean, that's a long time. Like, you know what? The Rams
franchises have tough stretches of 10 years, but this is 25 years after that of Detroit misery.
I mean, and we're talking about what they won one game. Like in 1991, they won one game, right? To go to before they lost in the conference championship, I think it was.
And that's offset by the time the Detroit Lions won 0 games in a season.
Yeah.
You know, like how many times it felt like in Detroit, you have some hope. Matthew Stafford was there for a bunch of years. You would have hoped to get something out of that. You get players like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, right? All-time greats. And nothing comes of it. Not even, you can't even say like the Vikings, like, oh, we made a run, and it didn't work out. Just nothing comes of it.
Ziggy, Matthew Stafford in 2024 is ranked number 4 on our playoff quarterback chart in the divisional round. Number 4. The Lions had him for a decade. They had Calvin Johnson, arguably a top 5 greatest receiver, top 3 greatest receiver of all time. And they did nothing. They were a joke that entire time almost. Like, you know, they had some teams that competed. They made a wild card. Maybe they made 2 wild cards. I can't remember. But generally throughout that time, it was like, oh, we're playing the Lions, win. Oh, we're playing the Lions, win. And to have Jared Goff be the guy after what he had go on in LA, you know, you compare it to the Rams. Kurt Warner coming out of the grocery store is a pretty unbelievable story too. But Jared Goff basically being written off and then having their...
It was worse. He wasn't coming out of the grocery store. He was coming out of the dumpster.
Having your quarterback too go and win in the first year that he left was such a gut punch to the Lions. And yeah, I think it probably would be because they're the Detroit Lions. Like this doesn't happen to them. And not only have they been good, 37-10, like since that October 30th day is unbelievable. They feel unbeatable right now. They've really felt unbeatable for a season and a half. And they've basically been unbeatable. Unless there's something, you know, I'm trying to think of the games that they lost. Unless they really screw up themselves. They just beat the crap out of teams. They're not really getting, I don't think that in their losses, they've just had other teams go off on them. I think it's because, you know, they can't execute in the red zone. Like they miss a throw. They have the issues against San Francisco, like the lucky bobbles against San Francisco. They've pretty much been an unbeatable team. And it's very rare that they make mistakes. This is where the curse would have to come in. That's the only way they're not getting to the Super Bowl. It's like the curse would come into play here. Can you imagine if Stafford went in and beat them in the conference championship? Oh my gosh, that'd be brutal. A loss to the Commanders this week would be devastating for the Lions. Like one of the most devastating losses in the history of football, I think.
I mean, that would be, then I might believe the Lions have transformed into us. Between the conference championship game last year and this game, I'd start to wonder, like, are they just the Minnesota Vikings under a new guy?
Or maybe the NFC North is just cursed now. Because even the Packers have had it bad.
Yeah, maybe it's when the Lions do well in the division, everybody else, including themselves, just everyone gets cursed because that's not supposed to happen. But look, it's, the Lions at this point, it's been a few seasons now. I think this speaks to the turnaround. They're not happy with winning 15 games.
No.
Imagine you go back to like just a few years ago, some of these Lions teams would say you're going to win 15 games. And you're going to say, if we don't win in the playoffs, the season's a huge disappointment. Fans will cry if the Lions lose to the Commanders in this game. Like, the expectations have completely transformed. People will be wondering, should we be replacing the head coach after a 15-win season? You can see the story right now.
No.
You'll probably come on here and say they should hire Dan Campbell because he went for it on fourth down one too many times.
Even if they go for it on fourth down and lose the game, I'm not going to say fire Dan Campbell.
All I mean to say is this team is completely transformed. They are considered a genuine contender because they are. They're the odds-on favorite to win the NFC. Honestly, I'm taking them over the field. Now it's time to prove it, right? Even last year, I won't say it was a miracle run, but it felt like, okay, we're doing great. Dan Campbell has talked about how hard it is to get back to that conference championship game. It is very hard to get back. You've got the easiest matchup available to you, I think, of the 4 teams remaining. It's time to get it done.
Yep. It's time to get it done. 100% right. And I think they will. There's no reason to think that they won't. Let's go on. We'll wrap up here a little bit quicker. Though we wanted to elaborate on those 2 games a little more.
The Rams, just want to talk about the Lions.
Yeah.
It's
the Rams and the Eagles. Okay. Earlier in the year, they played Sunday Night Football. I believe Sunday Night Football. 37-20, the Eagles won. Saquon Barkley had one of the best games in the history of running backs. He went for 255 yards, 9th most in NFL history in an individual game. The record is held by, of course,
go for it, Paul.
Adrian Peterson with 296 against the Chargers.
I just know you love saying Adrian Peterson's name so much.
I mean, again, I've said this before, but one of my favorite stats in NFL history is that in the game where Peterson ran for 296, he went for, it was either 240 or 250 in the second half of that game. Like that's insane to me. And no one ever talks about that. That has to be the most rushing yards in the history of a half in football. He went into the locker room with like 40 yards and can finish the game with 296. It's unbelievable. Too bad he didn't get to 300. Okay, so since then, though, the Rams have gotten much better. And both these teams are red hot. The Rams had that loss there against Philly, but since, I believe, in their last 12 games with having starters playing, excluding the Week 18 game where everyone rested, the Rams are 10-2. Like, some people get caught up in the records if you put them next to the team name. Like, over the past 12 games their stars have played, the Rams have won 10 games and lost only 2 of them. The Eagles are 13-1 going back to September. So these are 2 red hot teams. The only hiccup the Rams really had was against Philly. Now, do I think that's going to happen again as we head into Philadelphia? Remember, that game was in LA. This is in Philly, in the cold, in the playoffs, with those fans. It's a nightmare. I don't think it will, because playoff Stafford is just a different animal. They showed he has the most yards in the history of the playoffs, minimum 5 starts, I think. He averages the most passing yards, something like that. That was the graphic they showed. Like, this guy shows up when it matters. And whether or not, you think the Eagles are going to win the game, I don't think they're going to blow out the Rams here. So let me ask you, Ziggy, right now, looking at this, do you think we get something closer to their first matchup, where it was an Eagles blowout and Saquon ran wild, or do you agree with me that the Rams will keep this close?
I'm on the record saying that you shouldn't be looking just to the last time teams played to figure out what's going to happen. Sleet and or snow heading to Philly is not great news for the Rams. You need Matthew Stafford to have the game of his life here. But look, here is the thing. You've talked about it. We'll say it again. Matthew Stafford in the playoffs is different. And you saw against the Vikings, obviously the Vikings offense was disastrous. The Rams defense played a huge role in that. But Matthew Stafford also looked great against us. Now, maybe it's just because it seems like the Rams' 2 best games of the entire season were against the Vikings. Maybe they're just our kryptonite.
Wait.
I don't think it's that simple.
Do you think
Rams defense?
Sorry to interrupt you. Could it be like in 2022 where the Giants had their 2 best games of the year against the Vikings? Daniel Jones looked like, the second coming of Brady. And then after playing the poorest Vikings defense, they went to Philadelphia and got their ass kicked in the divisional round.
I'll tell you why I don't think that's going to happen. That Giants team, everybody knew they were bad. You look at that team, and the question was, how on earth are they doing this? Who is this Daniel Jones guy? How is their defense playing okay? The Rams have great players. Obviously, on offense, you've got Stafford, Kopp, Nakua, Kyren Williams, who I'm always happy to see doing well. Like, that's important.
My good friend.
Yeah.
My good friend, Kyren Williams.
Your good friend, Kyren Williams, of course. But this Rams defense is also stacked with good players.
Oh, can I tell the story? Am I allowed to tell that?
Tell the story. Is
that allowed to be told? I don't know. It probably is. It's not that bad. It was, I'm sorry to interrupt you in the middle of your spiel. It was just so funny. It's back when I worked on Kyle Hamilton's podcast at Notre Dame. And, the really good, those good dudes, a bunch of Notre Dame players. And we had Kyren Williams coming. We had Kyren Williams coming over for an episode. We had a bunch of guests. You could go back and watch. It's still on YouTube. And Kyren was just this ball of energy. Like every time I ever saw him at Notre Dame, because we did overlap for a couple of years. Kyren was just an amazing story too, how hard Kyren Williams worked. Like, I don't know if people know this, but going into our junior year, I think it was Ziggy's when Kyren won the starting job. He was a sophomore or freshman at the time. I think he was a freshman. And Kyren was the 6th running back on the depth chart. He was 5 or 6 on the depth chart going into training camps and spring football. And he worked his way up and was just, he's an amazing talent, but also just a super hard worker. So he got all the way up, but he's just a super fun personality anytime I've ever encountered him or heard stories. So Kyren Williams is coming over to Kyle Hamilton's house for the game here. And I'm setting up. It was in their garage. That's where the studio was. And when you open the door to the house, you could look right into the garage if the door was open to the garage, or you could go left and run up the stairs into the living room. So I'm down in the garage. The door to the garage is wide open, so I can see the front door. And I'm like maneuvering wires around. Okay, I'm just trying to set up the audio and the microphones. And all of a sudden, Kyren Williams comes bursting in the door. And he just shouts like, "Yo, what up, ma?" And he says a word that I can't say. And I look up, and then Kyren immediately looks at me through the garage door, and we just kind of lock eyes. It's like deer in headlights almost. He kind of perked up for a second. It's like, oh, and it's just me and him staring at each other. He was like,
he didn't expect to be calling you that.
Yeah, he didn't expect to be calling me. And I'm like trying to not to laugh, but I'm also like, what is going on here? And he just goes, hey. I was like, hey. And then we stare at each other for another few seconds. And then Kyren just runs up the stairs and goes, "Yo, who's in the garage?" Like super high pitched. And you just hear a bunch of thundering upstairs, like a little kid's running around. And I'll never forget just the deer in headlights, like, "Yo, what up?" And how's it going, my man? And
I'm glad his vision is a little bit better behind this Rams offensive line.
Yeah. Let's just say we had a great interview. Kyren was awesome. I've nothing but high praise for Kyren Williams. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. All I wanted to say was on this Rams defense too, right? Like Jared Verse, he's maybe the best young edge rusher in the entire NFL. He's going to be a star. Some of the guys who've had up and down seasons, like Kobe Durant, he got benched earlier this season, had a sack, had an interception against the Vikings. Byron Young has played very well this year. Like there's a lot of young talent on this defense. The Rams have done an incredible job rebuilding it after Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald left. That's a hard thing to do. They're a legit team. And Jalen Hurts, I will say it, did not look impressive against the Packers. The Eagles offense has been up and down all year. It looked down. Now, I know the Packers defense is good, but so is the Rams defense. And I like the Rams offense more than the Packers offense. If I had to, all of these games have big spreads except Bills, Ravens. But if I had to pick one to be on upset watch, it's got to be the Rams.
Yeah, The Rams, part of what's fun about the Rams defense right now is what you said, just how young they are. And they're kind of like the same way that we said Jayden Daniels is sort of like figuring it out, as he goes along. Kind of is how it feels with the Rams defense too, where when you have a lot of young talent, when it clicks, it can be special, especially when you combine them with a veteran like Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, guys who have won a Super Bowl. When you take that young team and you mold it over the course of the season and it all gets right at the same time, we've talked multiple times now about that Bengals team where Joe Burrow just figured it out. That's when all of a sudden you get that lightning in a bottle.
And you only have to win 4 games.
I think the Rams are close to having that. And you saw it against the Vikings. Now, I think the Vikings, I've said this before, I think they blew up more than... I thought the Vikings lost that game more than the Rams won it. That's probably me being a little petty about the Vikings performance, but you've seen Jared Goff come on and just be awesome. And you've seen the offense get much better very quickly in that playoff game than what they looked like 3 days ago. You need Cooper Kupp back though. That's something I think Cooper Kupp is a guy to circle in this game as he has, what is it here? Let me get the number. I think it's 84 receiving yards in the last 4 games combined. And to beat the Eagles, I think you're going to need 82 receiving yards, 5 catches for 82 yards in the last 4 games. This is an Eagles defense that's number 1 against the pass, number 1 in yards allowed per game, number 2 in points allowed per game. They're a young defense that's figuring out. They're kind of the same thing. Like any Eagles fan watches is going to say, hey, what about us? We got Jalen Carter. We got Quinion Mitchell. We got Cooper DeJean. All these guys are playing good football at the same time. They're just as young as the Rams guys. And I acknowledge that. So that's why
the Rams have Matthew Stafford.
So will Matthew Stafford be enough? And that's, again, this is like where the running backs being brought onto these teams with Derrick Henry going to Baltimore, Saquon going to Philly. If you take Saquon off of the Eagles,
they might not win the division.
I don't know what happens. Like I am much more likely to pick the Eagles because of Saquon Barkley. Like the same thing with the Ravens. If you take Derrick Henry off, and it sounds obvious to anyone who's listening. Yeah, you take off 2 of the best running backs in football, your team's going to have a worse chance. But when they were added onto these teams, people weren't making as big a deal as I think that they would be now if you took them off. And I just think the Rams are on the verge of something. Whoever wins this game is going to be able to challenge the Lions quite a bit. But if the Rams win and that defense stays hot, if you see an impressive performance where they can limit Saquon, I don't think anyone can stop him, but they can limit Saquon, and Jalen Hurts can't get going with his arm, I think Matthew Stafford right now could make you pay. So I'm almost ready to pick the Rams in an upset here over the Eagles. And in fact, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I think the Rams are going to go in and upset the Eagles in this game. What do you think?
If I had to pick an upset, this would probably be it. No, I can't see it happening.
There is part of that inevitable feel to the Eagles, the same way that I felt that way about the Lions, like where they're just going to win in these kinds of games. But I gotta stick with my pick. I'm gonna go with the Rams in this. Okay. All right, should we hit the last one?
Go for it. What is it with my internet just crapping out right before we're about to finish our shows every time?
I know. It's hard for me to pick this game because at my core, at my gut, like you put a gun to my head, I'm going to pick the Eagles, but I'm going to leave it with the Commanders.
So you just feel it with the Rams, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, last game.
Yeah. All right, last game. So we'll be really quick on this because we kind of hit it in the last episode, but the Texans going into Arrowhead, they lost earlier in the year. It was a close game. Tank Dell got injured in that game. I'm picking the Chiefs to win this one. I think it'll be kind of similar to Lions Commanders. There's better blowout potential in Lions Commanders, but I think it'll be one of those games where the Texans are sort of hanging around the whole game, but the Chiefs are in control most of the way. And maybe Houston has an onside kick opportunity at the end, but I just think there's still a gap there. The one thing that I'm looking at and saying, okay, maybe there's a shot is this Texans defense has been really good for a while now. And if that defense can keep, like, what are you doing here? How am I supposed to have like a full thought when this is going on the screen? You can hear me, right? Yeah. All right. So you can hear me this whole time.
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep going.
I'm laughing here. I'm in the middle of my point. I just see you like reaching over. Okay. The Texans defense has been really good all season long. And you saw them have one of their best performances of the year against the Chargers. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, this is multiple time champions, 3-time champions. They're not going to bend over in this game. Like it's not going to be a 4-interception game where you can just cruise because the defense dominates. I do think that there's a chance that if the Texans can limit the Chiefs offense, which has had their moments this year, that's how this is going to be a game. If the Chiefs, if the Chiefs offense comes out and they're rolling, this will not be like they will blow them out. But I think the only chance Houston has, they're going to need their defense, and they're going to need Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson specifically to step up and get after Patrick Mahomes, try and force him to make a mistake, get off the field. There's a chance. I definitely think the Texans have a chance. I'd be pretty surprised if they went into Arrowhead and won this weekend.
I'm picking the Texans to win this game.
Really?
Really. I'm not kidding. I've said it all week. I've put it in the comments. Like, I'm on the record. I'm ready to be embarrassed. I do not understand why the Chiefs are big favorites in this game. They're averaging 22 points a game. The offense has been dysfunctional all year. You're telling me that adding Marquise Brown back is going to solve the problem? Hollywood Brown's the guy. Travis Kelce's getting older. The Chiefs have struggled on offense. They just took 24 days off. It's been over 3 weeks since they've played an NFL game. And you can say, oh, well, Patrick Mahomes has gone on the bye after getting the 1 seed a bunch of times. They've always looked great. That's true. But usually they've looked a lot better than this. I think this is going to be a defensive battle, and it's going to come down to which defense can force more turnovers and make more big plays. And I think the Texans are just as well situated to do that as the Chiefs. You're top 3 in sacks. You're top 3 in takeaways. You've limited quarterbacks big time. Patrick Mahomes has taken more sacks and more hits this year than any other time in his entire career. I know moving Joe Thuney to left guard has helped, but no, I really think this is the Texans game. I think their offense is about as good. I think their defense is about as good. And when you put that together with a Chiefs team that I think is going to get off to a slow start, I really think the Texans are winning this game.
When you tell me that their offense is about as good, their defense is about as good, and they are not the team with Patrick Mahomes, I'm not picking them. Like it will take turnovers. One of those, like it'll be one of those games for the Chiefs to lose. In my opinion, I don't see the Texans coming out and lighting them up, and it's too bad that you have Diggs and Dell hurt, because the whole reason those guys are. Well, Dell was a rookie last year, but the whole reason you bring in Diggs and the excitement around it was, hey, we want to have the firepower that we can go up against as good as Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson are. Like that's the reason you're bringing everyone in. But the Ravens defense has been great. The Chiefs defense has been great. That's what you saw the problem last year. Remember the second half of that Ravens game? Totally shut down CJ Stroud. Like there was nothing they could do. They didn't have enough. And I just... Joe Mixon's been awesome and Nico Collins is awesome, but I'm not sure that there's enough there to upset Kansas City. And I don't think CJ Stroud's on the level of Lamar or Josh Allen. It's going to be one of those two guys to take down Mahomes, in my opinion. I think it's funny when you go back and look at the Texans schedule, they were 10-7, but then you look at they went to Minnesota, they hosted the Bills and won that game. They played the Lions too. They played the Ravens. They played the Chiefs. I mean, they were 1-4 in those games. Like they went to the Packers, 1-5 in those games. Like they were 10-7, but 5 of their losses were to the best teams in the league. You know what I mean? What was our final power ranking? Was that it? Our last power ranking was probably the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, Vikings, Packers, and Lions as the top 6.
Yeah.
You lost those games, and I mean, it was embarrassing against the Ravens, and the Viking game as well. But they also lost to the Packers that was Malik Willis, I think, right? Or no, the Love was back. So they haven't really beaten the good teams this year outside of the Buffalo game. And I kind of think that's what we're going to see. I don't expect them to get crushed, but I just think they're not on that level. And that's what I'm expecting.
What would we be saying about the Chiefs if they hadn't had a last-second field goal against the Panthers? If they hadn't gotten incredibly lucky against the Raiders? If they hadn't gotten incredibly lucky against the Broncos or the Chargers?
But
there were so many close
two
games.
Straight Super Bowls.
Yeah, great. Look, you give me the 2022 Chiefs, I'm picking them, or the 2023 Chiefs, I'm picking them over the Texans Chiefs, all day.
You were sitting there all season saying these guys suck on offense. They don't have it anymore. You and Jack were saying these guys suck. And then in the playoffs, they won. Like, that's what they do.
They look substantially better the last few weeks. You did not see that with the Chiefs. Look, I get it. They carved up the Steelers. Nice. They had a decent game against the Texans. Nice. This Chiefs team is different.
They just beat the Texans.
Yeah.
Like,
a close game. People are saying this is going to be a blowout. The Texans could have won that game.
It's not going to be a blowout.
Struggled against the Texans defense. What else am I supposed to tell you?
It's not going to be a blowout. And I'm not trying to argue here that the Texans are a bad team. I'm just saying I think the Texans are on the tier below, and it's going to take, a multi-turnover game from Mahomes or, fumbled punt, like one of those kind of things for the Texans to win. Possible. It's very possible.
We'll see.
And you have CJ Stroud. Like, you do have a top 10 quarterback in the league. That makes anything possible. I'd just be surprised. So there you have it. Divisional preview. So in each game, let's quickly run through it. I have the Chiefs. I have the Bills in the AFC, and you're going Texans, Bills.
Yeah.
NFC, I went Rams, Lions. You went Eagles, Lions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're both predicting one upset.
Yeah, one upset. Well, you got to. I mean, we can't just be boring out here. It's who the hell wants to hear it? Who wants to hear someone come on and say, yeah, I think the Bills at home are going to win. I think the Chiefs at home are going to win.
But we're not saying it because it's what people want to hear. I honestly think the Texans are going to win this game.
I don't know if I actually think the Rams are going to win deep down, but there's something telling me to do it. And I'm going to listen to that little voice. So, all right, there you have it. The divisional preview. Paul and Ziggy, we will be back reacting on Saturday. So I'm actually going down to the national championship for Notre Dame on Sunday.
There may be a react to that on this channel with me.
Yeah, Ziggy's going to take over the channel from Sunday through Tuesday, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I'll make thumbnails for him, but you're going to get a lot of Robert Ziggy Ziegler if he decides to give himself to you. I mean, that sounded a little weirder than I intended, but
what? If I decide to what? Wrap the show. We're done. We're done. We're done.
To put himself on. If Ziggy decides to put himself on camera, you're going to get a lot of Robert Ziggy, maybe too much Robert Ziggy Ziegler.
Okay, no, we're wrapping the show.
Sunday night Ziegler, Monday night Ziegler, Tuesday night Ziegler. All you can eat is Robert Ziggy Ziegler.
Wrap the show.
All right, we'll see you. Ziggy. Yeah, we'll see you Saturday night.